Welcome back. It's going to be a little bit different. I had a video kind of already lined up. I, scripted it out with, a bunch of things, but life happens. It's part of being a solopreneur, having to be the only one here probably like 95% of the time. And the week got away from me. And but one of the things that I didn't want to do was let that deter me from putting out a video. Now, I didn't want to put out just junk and just release something just to release something. So this is going to be kind of an abbreviated version of what I wanted to do, and I took the time to get some B-roll and like I said, go over this script and edit it and kind of think about this process. And just the week got away from me, and being busy is good. That's a good problem to have. So I'm not complaining about that. Trust me, I'm not complaining. But one of the things that brought me down the last time trying to do these videos was I let things get in my way. Uh, I've said this before, and I'll say it probably many more times. I just let the excuses take over, and that's one thing I did not want to do this time. I didn't want to let any excuse deter me from my goal. My goal is to release a video a week. And this might not be the highest production value. I'm going to do my best. I hope you appreciate it. I hope that you can see the sincerity that I'm trying to do in these videos to give you the real deal, to give you, the honest truth that it's not always, perfect prints and, just things that you see on Instagram. This is the real deal. The purpose of this video was supposed to be how to manage, ironically, how to manage my work week and how to stay productive with doing this social media content. And now I'm adding the YouTube content, and it's just it got a little bit too much this week. But the way I try to stay on task is I use Google Calendars. And the way I use Google Calendar is because I can, block out times. Over the years, you'll kind of develop that timing of how long it takes to do this many shirts or embroider this many hats and whatnot. But at the beginning, just fudge it. Just guesstimate. Put in, okay, I want to take an hour of time to embroider hats. I want to take an hour of time to print shirts. I want to take an hour of time for lunch. You need that, your time. Don't exclude that. I need 2 hours of time to design new stuff or work on social media, work on YouTube videos. And the reason I like it is because it's modular. I can move things around. So if the hats, like I said, things happen, thread breaks or the digitizing's off or just different things, I can expand it a little bit. Okay, this is taking an hour and a half, so that's going to bump this down a little bit further. So maybe I can't go to lunch at 12, maybe I'm going to lunch at 1, and instead of taking an hour, maybe I'm only taking 30 minutes. And I'm able to move those things around so I can stay on task. Now, that doesn't mean that it's set in concrete, and that's why I like the Google Calendar part of it, because I can move things around even to the next day. That's not a loss. That's not something I put in the loss column where I mess something up. But things happen. I don't. Maybe I didn't calculate how long that job was going to take, and when you do it over time, you get better at it. So using something like that, it doesn't have to be Google Calendar, but that's the one I like because I can set different colors, and so I know each day what I'm doing. And what I do at night, after I've kind of calmed down and thinking about the next day, I'll look at the calendar and see what I have, what I can improve, what I can add, what I should take off, and have a plan. Because I've heard that the saying that if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And being a solopreneur, that's a big part of it. And like I said, some people don't like, they say, I became an entrepreneur so I didn't have to follow, a strict regimen, which is fine. But, there needs to be some structure. There needs to be some give and take. And this is how I found that it's helped me the best. It might not work for you, this, specific way of doing it, but it works for me. One of the other things is that, you quit a 40-hour a week to work, 80 hours for yourself. And it's true, I'm here practically 7 days a week. Now I'm not here 8 hours every single day, but the way I kind of plan out my day is I'm here about 8:30, 9 o'clock, you know, at the latest 9 o'clock I'm here. And, I'm working throughout the day and I'm usually leaving at about 6 o'clock. So it's a full day, but I'm also working on Saturday. And Monday through Friday, that's my work week. That's what I'm doing. That's how I'm, making my money, paying the rent, keeping the lights on. And so I'm using Monday through Friday as the grind. That's the main, bulk of the work. Saturdays are kind of like my catch up day. I want to be sure that I'm, still on schedule for the things that I owe my clients. I, maybe I went over time a little bit, so I need to, kind of catch up. And then Sundays I'm here, but it's just in the afternoon for a couple hours. And those are my quiet hours. I want to come in here, kind of clean up, because throughout the week it's a mad dash. I'm just juggling, the embroidery, the DTG, the packaging, the delivery, and things get messy around here. So Sunday afternoons I'm here just for a couple hours to clean up, making sure things are ready, looking at my work week, trying to plan things out, making sure I have the supplies I need, and just kind of organizing things so that way Monday morning when I get in here, I'm ready to rock and roll. So, like I said, that's how my schedule works. That's how I've kind of built my business. That's what works for me. It might not work for you, and you might not want to be here, be doing your work 7 days a week. That's also a thing. But I love what I do. I love the space I'm in. I'm about to, renew the lease here, and I'm debating between 3 and 5 years. And I count it as a success because when I first moved in here, it was a lot of space and I didn't know what to do with it. Now it's getting a little bit more crowded, and that's a good problem to have, that you're expanding and you're able to keep this lease and keep things running. It's about the productivity and about planning your day, planning your week, planning your month. And I want to emphasize that because that's how I got from having this machine in my living room to having, you know, it in one of my bedrooms, and then into two of my bedrooms, and then into a converted garage business, and then into this space that I have here. And if you have, struggles, or you have dreams of opening up your own, shop, or embroidery business, follow along, subscribe, like, ask me questions if you want. I'll do my best to answer them down in the comments. But I know this is a little bit different from what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be real with you. And I didn't want, like I said, I didn't want to make any excuses of not being able to push out a video that brought value to those that are, looking to start a business, or they're in business and, they're looking to grow. And, next week, I don't know, I do have a script for next week that I was working on already, that, we kind of pre-planned. That's part of the planning. It's in my Google Calendar, and, we'll see how it goes. But I want to make that a priority for you, for me, that, these videos are going to keep going. They're going to keep moving forward. And I hope that I bring value to you and your business. So thanks for sticking around. I'll see you on the next one.